This bill requires that we treat adult criminals as adults like the rest of the country does.
Which ultimately were 2 expunged. He was given a 3rd chance, and now he's the face of a bill that would not afford young people in Washington, D.C. the same opportunities afforded to him.
Chaos erupts the moment Byron Donald steps in and starts grilling Jasmine Crockett over the D.C. Crime Act. Her talking points collapse on impact, the room shifts, and every attempt to push back only gets her further exposed. Byron fires off receipts, Crockett stumbles, and the entire chamber watches a full-on destruction unfold right in front of them.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of H.R. 7530, the D.C. Crimes Act. The Committee on Oversight and Accountability has held 3 hearings with D.C. officials. Many members of the committee have met privately with various D.C. officials to discuss the crime crisis in our nation's capital. Throughout this work, one thing has been made abundantly clear. The progressive policies of the District of Columbia City Council are simply not working. Last year, the Congress successfully blocked the D.C. Council's revised Criminal Code Act of 2022 by passing the bipartisan House Joint Resolution 26, the first law passed by the 118th Congress. That was a great first step towards addressing the rising crime in D.C., but that only kept the problem from getting much worse. The bill we are considering today expands upon that work. The D.C. Crimes Act overturns targeted portions of the D.C. Council's Youth Rehabilitation Act by amending the definition of a youth offender from a person under the age of 25 to under the age of 18. Let me restate. The D.C. Crimes Act overturns the targeted portions of the D.C. Council's Youth Rehabilitation Act by amending the definition of a youth offender from somebody under the age of 25 to under the age of 18. Currently, D.C. Code allows a criminal under the age of 25 to be given the same leniency that is afforded to minors. This bill requires that we treat adult criminals as adults like the rest of the country does. As juvenile crime soars through the district, the bill also requires the D.C. Attorney General to create a publicly available website that tracks juvenile crime data. This data will inform Congress, the district's elected officials, the Metropolitan Police Department, the public, and others on the severity of juvenile crime in the District of Columbia. Finally, the bill prohibits the D.C. Council from amending its sentencing and criminal liability laws, locking into place the current D.C. criminal law, and leaving Congress as the sole authority to amend such laws in the future. The D.C. Council would have succeeded in implementing radical soft-on-crime policies if it were not for the bipartisan effort of this Congress to disapprove of the D.C. Council's legislation. Even Democratic Mayor Muriel Bowser vetoed the progressive criminal reform package, only for her veto to be overturned by the D.C. City Council. The Committee on Oversight and Accountability is committed to its constitutional responsibility to oversee the District of Columbia. We cannot allow further pro-crime policies to be put into place while this crisis continues. Citizens of D.C. and the visitors of our nation's capital deserve to feel safe. This bill is a great step towards ensuring our capital city is going to be safe. I encourage my colleagues to join me in supporting this legislation, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentlewoman from Texas, Representative Crockett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I sat and listened to the beginning of this debate, my heart simply broke. And many people know me for being able to do alliterations, and all I could think about was amnesia allows adolescent accountability avoidance agility from across the aisle. So work with me for a second. Imagine being a young man born to Jamaican and Panamanian parents who messed up not once, but twice. Imagine standing in front of a judge with your whole future hanging in the balance, and instead of prison, you are given a promise of mercy. Your record gets wiped clean. You get a second chance at life. Now imagine taking that promise and turning it into promotion. You go to college, you get a job, and even become a member of Congress. That's what redemption looks like. That's what America is supposed to be about. And that is exactly the story of the next wannabe governor from Florida. As a young man, he went through pretrial diversion for misdemeanor marijuana possession. As an adult, yet younger than 24, he was charged with and ultimately placed on probation for felony bribery charges, which ultimately were 2 expunged. He was given a 3rd chance, and now he's the face of a bill that would not afford young people in Washington, D.C. the same opportunities afforded to him. Let me be real. If he had grown up under Donald Trump's America or under the very DC crime bill he's pushing today, he wouldn't be standing here as a member of Congress. He'd still be living with the weight of those charges. So let's call this what it is, opportunities for me, but not for thee. He climbed the ladder of redemption, and now he's yanking it right up from the DC youth. See, most of us were taught to lift as you climb, but clearly some have forgotten to lift as they climb, and now they are committed to telling the next generation to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. I will not sit quiet while a man who was saved by grace turns around and tries to snatch grace away from others. If we're going to be real about crime, about communities,
time
about...
has expired.
I'd like to yield for an additional minute, please.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
About second chances and even third chances, then it needs to start with us looking in the mirror and remembering that even the author of this bill has a story too before he tries to lecture DC on safety. And it would be complete hypocrisy to have, hypothetically, someone convicted of 34 felonies to lecture DC on what to do with youthful offenders who have been scientifically shown not to have fully developed brains under the age of 25, especially if said multi-count convicted felon was in his 70s when he was convicted. What would be his excuse? Because his brain would be fully developed, and with that, I will yield back.
Walked into that hearing expecting the usual dodging and deflecting, but the second Byron Donalds locked in on Jasmine Crockett, the entire energy flipped. Sat there watching him lay out the facts piece by piece, and before long, it was clear Crockett had no idea how to defend the chaos happening in DC under her party's watch. Started with the skyrocketing crime rates. Byron drops the stats, cites the victims, and lays the failures squarely on the people who keep pretending things are improving. Right then, Crockett tries jumping in, talking about context and reform, but the excuses didn't hit. Byron fired right back, cutting through the noise. How does a city get safer when criminals keep getting released before the ink dries on the arrest report? The room got tense. Crockett leaned in with the same talking points we've heard 100 times. Systemic issues, equity, misinformation. But Byron wasn't having any of it. Watched him carve through every claim she made, exposing the contradictions, exposing the failures, and exposing the damage their soft-on-crime approach has caused. The moment that broke it? When Crockett tried accusing him of misrepresenting the bill, Byron reaches down, pulls up the literal text of the DC Crime Act, and reads the sections word for word. Her face dropped. Saw staffers behind her shift in their seats? No way out of that one, she got caught live. Then she tries pivoting to Republicans' fear-mongering, but he shuts that down instantly, pointing straight to the families begging for safer streets, the businesses forced to shut down, and the officers quitting because their hands are tied by political games. Byron pressed harder, asking her straight up why criminals are getting more protection than the people being robbed, assaulted, and carjacked. Crockett tried firing back with manufactured outrage, but the pushback only made her look more rattled. The more she yelled, the calmer he got, and that contrast lit the whole place up. By the end, she was out of talking points, out of comebacks, and out of patience. Byron walked her through the failures line by line until even her own side looked uncomfortable, stepped back from the mic, and the room knew exactly what just happened. Byron Donalds didn't just challenge Jasmine Crockett, he absolutely destroyed her entire argument on the DC Crime Act.